What's up, guys, and welcome to the 75th Xamarin Android tutorial. So the last video, what we concentrated on with SignalR was configuring the server implementation of it. So that's going to allow our clients, these two guys in particular, to talk to each other via a server. So the server implementation was set up just as a review. Here we have our chat hub connection that will then will listen for clients, so the client can call this send function, and then what it will do is call out to all the connected clients a broadcast message function that the clients will have, and then let the clients do whatever they want with it at that point. So it's basically an intermediary between the clients this server is acting as, and this method is what connects the clients together. All right, so this is the server implementation, and here's the JavaScript code that acts as the client. Like I said, if you haven't watched the last video, this is all in the last video of doing this. Okay, so this is what we have so far, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to close out of this one, and I'm going to open up a new project. So let's go to open up an instance of Visual Studio. And let's start a new Xamarin project, guys. All right, so this is going to be a blank app, and let's go ahead and call it SignalR. Yeah, let's do SignalR client, and let's do OK. So this is going to be, once again, the client implementation that's going to be talking to the server. And the template, as usual, we do not need. Let's go ahead and kind of get rid of this code here. And let's go into the properties. And I am currently using the compiling with the latest version, which right now is API 23. And let's just leave it at that, really. Just always like to double check that. Never know. And let's close out of that. Okay, so we have a blank app. And the first thing we want to do is let's go ahead and start the UI portion of it. Okay, and we'll go by this this pretty quick because this is a little besides the point, I guess, of the actual tutorial, which is SignalR, and then the UI part is something that just kind of puts it together and puts it into a fashion which is, you know, it allows it to be an example and have it make a little more sense. So let's go ahead and open up our layout. And we've done a lot of XML. It's safe to say that we have done a lot. So I'm not going to bore you with too many details, as you have already seen this before, I can trust. But I will explain. So the relative layout, of course, is just a holder. The scroll view is what really does all the magic. It's just it's going to be a scroll view, and there's going to be a linear layout inside of it. And what we're going to do, guys, is as we receive messages, we're going to programmatically put text views inside of this linear layout, and then of course we can rely on it scrolling once it gets bigger than the screen. Because it's wrapped in this scroll view, it will actually scroll. So who would have guessed, right? So there's a linear layout, of course, and all this has is the button and the edit text, and that correlates with this button and this edit text. And then, as you saw in the example last video, or maybe even this one right now, if you want to check out again, that's what this is doing. These two applications are communicating with each other. So let's go ahead and minimize that. And that's all this edit text is in this button, which we will wire up an event for this button. And then, like I said, this is the linear layout that's inside of the scroll view right there. Okay, guys, so pretty simple. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward. That's all we're going to be really doing with the main XML file. And there's a dialog that pulls up. So if we go ahead and kill this application, bring it back, we'll be able to see that there's a dialog that that comes up to ask for your prompt you for a name, and then your color that you want your text to represent as, and then once you hit OK, that will actually connect to the client. So this is a dialog fragment. So let's go ahead and make this real quick, just because it's makes it a little more easy to get data from the user. But because it's just besides the point, I will move rather quickly. So what we're going to do is we're going to make let's first actually make the dialog fragment. So let's add new item, and it will be a fragment, dialog fragment, but we'll specify that. And we'll call it get info. All right, so get info is, like I said, a dialog fragment. And there is actually going to be, we're not going to worry about the onCreate. Right now, we're going to just do the onCreate view, which we will render real quick. But before that we do that, we'll actually go ahead and let's leave that for now. And let's make the layout for this dialog fragment. So we'll go into new item, Android layout, call it get info. And like I said, this is the one that comes up here. So we're going to make this XML right here as well. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and paste that in. Like I said, it is pretty trivial, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I will go over it and you'll be able to see how that looks. This is how it's going to look. And here is the AXML for it. So it is just an edit text that asks for the username. And then inside of it is a linear layout. And all this is doing, guys, is the orientation is horizontal, so they will span horizontally. These three views, and their background is just red, green, and blue. So red, green, and blue. And then right below it, this is another linear layout that's stacked inside of this linear layout. So there's another one that's stacking its children, the radio group, that has radio buttons in it, that both horizontally. So these will span across as well, and they will be right below it, but these aren't really connected at all, these colors and these radio buttons, red, green, and blue. Although they do look like they are, right? So the user can get the idea that this is red, this is green, and they'll know which one they're selecting. And then of course at the bottom there is the button which will wire up, which will confirm their selection. All right, so that's all there is to it. Probably not the best way to do it as far as getting an option, but it's quick, it's simple, gets the job done, and we'll do some coding to be able to get and to know what color that the user wants their text to be represented in. So that being said, let's go ahead and do a quick rebuild for good measure. So that's all the AXML that we're going to have in this application. Super simple. And then now we can come into here and we can inflate our view with the layout get info, the container. We do not want to attach it to the root, and return the view. All right, so that's this part right here. And like I said, I'm going to move rather quickly, just because it's a little, it's not relevant really to the actual application. So the point of it, at least, which is SignalR, right? So all right, so let's go ahead and bring in this stuff. This is the edit text that will hold the user name, and then the button which will wire up and wait for a confirm by the user. So we'll do button OK, and then radio group equals radio group. And I always, as you guys probably know by now, but I always like to kind of be a little more explicit on things. So, we have done all this before, radio groups, but I really don't like copying and pasting too much. And when I do, I'll do my best to explain what's going on. But I don't like doing that too much because you can get in the habit of oh, I'll explain this later, and then, you know, never happens, or, you know, it's just not it's not ideal for tutorials to copy and paste too much. But I figured that if I do copy and paste, I'll do my best to explain it. And when I don't, when I'm doing it right now, I'm kind of, you know, I may be wasting some people's time because they already know what's going on and they don't really need to watch me code for something that's irrelevant to the topic. Well, then you guys can just fast forward. So you guys can just fast forward 5 minutes from here, and you know, the people that needed this to see this can see it, and then the people that didn't need to see it don't need to see it. So it's a win-win, right? So that's kind of why that's my mythology, at least, I guess. So anyway, so I have a button click event, and then we know what we're going to want to do here at the end. We're going to want to dismiss the fragment so that we want it to move down, right? One thing I do want to do as well is do an override, which I do on all the dialog fragments. If you've looked at my tutorial on dialog fragments, you'll see that I do it on activity created. And then what I will do here is request a feature. Dialog, call the window, request feature, and I will want to do node title. So that will actually hide the title bar. So I don't want that to show in our dialog. And here is a spot where we're actually, when we click, we want to know what the user what the user chose as their username, and what color they want their text to be represented as. So that's no biggie. What we will do is we'll actually come into here and we'll make some custom event args. And you know, if you guys watched some of the other videos on dialog fragments, this should be all too familiar. So there we go. We'll inherit from event args, and what this is doing is just going to keep track of the values of these fields when the user selects it. So we have these two properties, and because of that, now we'll make an event, and the event handler will hold arguments of on getInfoComplete event args type, and we will call it getInfoComplete on getInfoComplete. So what basically happens is when the user, the main activity which calls this fragment will listen for on getInfoComplete to be invoked, and at that point it knows to continue on with the code. So what it'll do, it'll come into here, and we will do we will make args. So we'll make the args, and we'll do new on getInfo args, and at this point we can do the text name, right? Because at that point we can assume that the text name has been selected, and if the user wants to leave it blank, we're not going to do really kind of checking for that, whatever, right? Here we go. Okay, so that we have the args, and then this text name correlates with this text name, and this text name is the from the edit text, the value in which the user has put. So I will paste this in, but I will explain it, and it's pretty trivial, hopefully. What this is doing, this is a switch case, and the radio group is this radio group right here. Let me go ahead and pull that up. Oops. So that's this radio group right here, red, green, and blue, and it's just checking to see which one is selected. So that's what we're using this switch case for, and it does checked radio button ID. So this is being the ID of one of these radio buttons that was checked, and it could be none. That's why we'll have a default value. You'll see here in a second. So what it does is it checks for the resource ID, because this will be the resource ID, which we do specify inside of our AXML. So this is the red, green, blue, radio red, the IDs of each. So we'll say, is the red button checked? If it is, background color equals 1. If green is checked, background color equals 2, and then it equals 3. All right, so at this point, we are done, and we will do on getInfo completed, and we will invoke this event so that anyone, any method, anything that's subscribed to this event will be then called, and we'll pass in the args with it. All right, so that's pretty much it for this dialog. Once again, if you're not too familiar with what's going on, I do have a couple videos on dialog fragments, and be sure to check them out. Okay, so our dialog fragment is complete. Let's go ahead and close that. And then we'll come back into our main activity, which calls the dialog fragment on startup. So we're going to have two global variables, which we'll be able to use, which you guessed it, are going to be correlating with the values that come back from the dialog fragment, string and an int. And the first thing we're going to do as soon as it starts up is we are going to call the dialog fragment. So we are going to show it. First, we're going to wire up. So here's our wire up. On getInfoComplete, we want to wire up a method. This method will be called when at this point. So as soon as it invokes it, it will close. No. And it'll come into here and it will call anything subscribed to it, which is this method. Okay, guys? So let's go ahead and show it. And to show it, we need the Fragment Manager, which is a property of an activity. And we will call it getInfo. All right. So that's pretty much it. As soon as we start this up, it'll show you that. So let's go ahead and we'll do the 5-inch emulator. So let's go ahead and call this and or run it and see if everything's working as expected. Which the only thing that right now should happen is the dialog should come up. Cool. So it ran and then the dialog shows up, and then when we hit OK, it should crash. Okay, cool. And well, you won't hear me say that very much. Cool that it crashed, right? But I know that it threw this exception, and I knew that that means that this is working, and then this got called. All right. So at this point, this is where the magic happens. This is where we actually start doing some SignalR stuff, and we're going to have to import everything and all that good stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into our components, and we're going to actually bring in SignalR, the client side of it. And an easy way to do it is to use the component store. So let's go ahead and go into Get More Components. The component store will come up. I believe SignalR will suffice. Yeah. Okay. And we will add to app. And if everything works well, it should add, yes, the SignalR.client. And now that that is connected, or I'm sorry, referenced right here, we should now be able to import some stuff that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So this is when, let's kind of get our head straight. This gets called when the user has entered in a username and they have selected a color that they want their text to be represented with. So at this point, let's go ahead and initialize or save our global variables to get some values inside of them. So we'll do e.txt name. So e is of type on get info completed event args. That's going back to these right here. And we have these because we specified when this is called, we want to pass in on get info complete event args, which we do right here. Okay, so background color equals e dot background color, and let's go ahead and make the connection. So new hub connection, and if we what I did was a control dot, and this came up, this context came up. And I can choose to some options. And what's cool about Visual Studio 2015 now is it'll actually give you a preview of what's going on, where this is appending, and then this is actually importing a using, or importing the DLL by using a using. And I'll select that option right here. And this is going to be string URL is going to be the way to do it for me. This is going to be the actual URL in which the ASP.NET SignalR application is running on the server. So this is the URL of the server. And this is where I'm going to stop right here, this video. So there's a little more to it, but we're going to we're going to actually continue it in the next video, because at this point I want to talk a little about the server URL and what we can do to actually reach this.